Hello internet friends, my name is Bay and welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass First coverage for the overall warrior. I don't know where that was going. It's just, just talking a lot all day today, recording other stuff, and here we are for a little bit of a wrap-up B-roll footage while it plays out. Little Halls of Atonement action going on here. Little bit of derp happening in the background, but that's, you know, par for the course. Alpha. Trying things out, working on things, obviously reacting and doing goofy stuff in comms. If you want, of course, the run you're seeing in the background now with comms, which word ups in the group. Novel's not in voice comms actually, but the puns and the terrible jokes are abound. But if you want the overall summaries here and some extra bits, depending on which videos you are listening to or watching for all of the warrior coverage, this is sort of your wrap-up video. And of course, if you are enjoying the coverage overall, you are maybe new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button. Trying to make a huge push to over 100k subs on YouTube for all the content that I'm pushing out here, all the coverage, all the analytics, all the deep dives, all the educational stuff. And of course, if you want to share this video around or share any of these videos around, this is your little nudge that does help. Of course, the spiderweb is a big deal, and I appreciate everyone tuning in, hanging out, listening, sharing their feedback and comments. When we get to the big feedback junket in mid-June, probably late June at this rate, I will be going back through each individual spec video and diving through all the comments again to double check that I don't miss anything, because that is all valuable feedback to help me distill the, you know, the pulse of what the community thinks. Of course, you can hang out in my chat when it's live, but overall warrior stuff. The couple of things off here, I have some highlighted notes to go over. Is there is some conflicting information about War Machine, the talent now that all warriors have. The auto attack rage, sure, that's fine. But the not requiring a mob tag, just being in your party, maybe it's requiring the XP flag. It also works really far away to still award you with that extra rage. In a raid group, you have to be in combat or at least have tagged the mobs that do die. And in PvP, I was reading a comment on YouTube earlier that it works like that right now, where you just get inundated with rage no matter where you are. But for the protection warrior, I think that's mostly why we were a little bit concerned, about it, because obviously they turn rage into either defense or some of it is rage into damage. All warriors, of course, do rage into damage. But the interesting one, of course, is that survivability aspect. I wonder how it's going to work out in the end with how much rage you're able to actually accrue in AoE fights. Granted, I'm trying to think, spacing out my words there, because I'm trying to think back to bosses. Obviously, Hive Mind, more realistically, would be ridiculous. Or more recently, rather. Realistic, obviously, because it is a boss fight that has tons of ads. But because right now, the weirdness that comes into play, let me pull up the time calculator again. The weirdness that comes into play for protection now is that Into the Fray is up there. And Into the Fray is very much almost a set and forget most of the time. So opening up the 15 row by putting Into the Fray down there against Booming Voice and that Unstoppable Force means that other talents could see some additional play. And that's why the War Machine, which is one of the new adjustments, because Vengeance is gone, in particular Vengeance is gone, and then Safeguard is also removed from the Prot Warrior. There's a lot going on there that I wonder. It's all the warrior. This is like an overall thing. The overall warrior kind of, it feels like warrior and paladin, I did them back to back. They're all really positive. I didn't really feel any moments when I was testing that I was just like, ew, what is this doing here? There's some pain points, right? Like there was a lot of pain points got brought up about double time for Prot Warrior because they're losing a bit of mobility. But I feel like you actually gain mobility if you spec for it now, because you'll have 2 charges of charge. and Intervene and Heroic Leap. Whereas on live right now, you only have 2 Intercept, 1 Heroic Leap. So you do get like one little bit more offensive action going on there. And the new Intervene is just leaps and bounds stronger potentially than Intercept ever could be. You had Safeguard. It was brought up, though. Safeguard was there, but Safeguard was only 30% damage reduction that you take away from your co-tank or whoever you're charging. Now you just absorb everything, every melee and ranged hit. So the War Machine stuff there, the mobility pain point for Prot, definitely a thing, or I guess a sour spot is what I wrote down in my notes. It's a tough one. And as I always say in all these videos, we'll have to wait and see what sort of pans out, because I know there's a bit of, not maybe fear mongering, but a little bit scared at thinking that all these things are going to go live right off the bat, and then everything's going to be terrible. Some things, if it went live like right now, like, I'm sorry, Warlocks, but, and maybe Feral Druids and Enhancement Shaman right now, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of paint on those canvases, or there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen right now, and hopefully they get sorted. But we're not going to see a lot of other changes, I think, which is why I'm trying to get my beta feedback junket here for like mid to late June. Because if I can get together, and if I can get that all distilled to Blizzard by the end of the month, I kind of think we're not going to see class changes until maybe August, when beta might start, when the game is sort of like feature complete forward. It's like, 2 months from now or something, which is plenty of time, hopefully, for them to start working and iterating upon classes. Because there's lots of good things. If you've seen lots of positive movement on Warrior and Paladin right back to back, these video series right here, even if you're a Warrior and you haven't looked at the Paladin stuff, all 3 Paladins were like, wow, there's some good things going on here. Prot Paladin actually has some similar talent tiers that Protection Warrior has, where you're just like, oh man, all these are good, which is the whole point of how talents are supposed to be, is that you're supposed to look at that talent row and be like, oh man, these are all like, oh, I want this one right now, but this one's also really good, but oh, this is really good. So they're all supposed to be really strong in their situation you use them in, and then of course you can only pick one. The Fury Warrior and the Arms Warrior, that always comes up in the comments, how does it feel to play them? So I play on live a lot of Enhancement Shaman, and I played a lot of Havoc Demon Hunter, which are both completely hasted GCD locked specs, which means that the more haste you have, the faster you hit GCDs, and you are hitting a GCD every time you can. There's always something to hit. Whereas I play a little bit of Ret Pally, I play a little bit of Arms Warrior on the side, and I play some caster stuff, either Elemental Shaman, Resto Shaman, Fire Mage, those kind of things. So there's downtime inherent in waiting for a spell to finish, to some degree. There's downtime in Arms Warrior, there's downtime in Ret Pally, a little bit. Just enough, right? I play the slower specs because I'm obviously very in tune with sitting there all day and just slamming away at those GCDs. And it was interesting to me on Fury Warrior that there is actually a potential to, if it could work, because of the change to, I will double check the names here on my talent calculator. You put together, like, what if you run like Sudden Death, so give you a chance to proc executes, right? You ran Furious Slash, which gave you the rotating huge extra haste window. You ran Frothing Berserker, which changed the rotation slightly, so you always wanted to build to 100 rage. And then you're sitting in this huge, you've obviously got your 15% haste from your enrage window, which was cut back a little bit, I think, to open up potential haste scaling from your talents, or obviously for you to care about some haste from gear. But you've got the 15% there, you've got the 10% from Frothing Berserker, and then you've got the additional 6% you can stack up with Furious Slash, all in the rotation by itself. You've got Sudden Death procs going off, maybe you've got Wrecking Ball in there as well, which gives you a chance whenever you enrage to allow you to do the big old 300% damage Whirlwind as your filler, and Whirlwind of course generates more rage per hit, right? It generates a flat amount of rage on a single target. You're not going to have Fervor of Battle in this case, which just gives you more on top of that, but you're going to be attacking so fast as well. You're just going to be rolling in rage, hasted, and it's a really quick rotational oriented build by itself, just off of those abilities alone, you're going to be close to like a 1.2 GCD before any gear comes into play at all. Because you've got 31, if my math is correct, 31% haste, and every 10% haste is minus 0.1 seconds off the GCD if you're a 1.5 second class. So you have 50% haste and you're at 1 second global, and you're at 100% haste, you're at a 0.75. And Fury Warrior definitely plays fast, and it speeds up, and it has that moment to moment like right. But it was also interesting to see that you could play a Fury Warrior build that was much slower, where you could always enrage yourself on new targets with like fresh meat, the new quality of life change to fresh meat, which allows you to enrage yourself always on a brand new target you bloodthirst. So sure, you'll be a little faster there because the enrage window, but the enrage was a little smaller now in the overall haste department, but you obviously want the damage amp. But then you can have like Fervor of Battle and Wrecking Ball, so you can give some procs here and there. Maybe you can run things like Inner Raid, which is just the bigger raging blows and a little bit of cooldown reduction baseline on those. Or there's also the new Onslaught talent, which a lot of the overarching stuff that I read about Warrior in chat, or Archimtiros made giant posts through his Patreon page, as I linked in the Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior videos, that are going into more detail. Not a lot of theory craft or math crafters are doing a lot of stuff for Warrior, so he's kind of the guy with the pulse on, he's got his pulse on the finger, his finger on the pulse of what the community could have sponges up and feels for the overall Warrior, writes the guides, figures things out. But I always try to put things in different perspectives, that I'm not trying to say, oh, this is going to be the only one build you can play, and you can only play it this way. If you're not playing this way, then you're bad. That's just not how I look at the game. Things are going to maybe ebb and flow specs towards a certain area, but I'm looking at it in the way that Fury Warrior could have sort of a slower, clunkier play style. Clunky being like the sound it makes when you move your armor around because you're holding two giant swords, not in the sense that it feels bad, because Fury is one of the least overall fundamentally mechanically changed specs, because it works, right? It feels really good. The Legion change is in the BFA with a little bit of refinement. Fury Warrior is almost like Rogue, where the engine is running, it's purring, but you know what? It could use a little bit tweaks here and there, maybe some nuts and bolts tightened. It doesn't need to change the whole freaking engine, like some of the Warlock specs or Enhancement Shaman or whatever else you might want to use that out. Shadow Priest. Can we get some Fs in the comment section for Shadow Priest? I'll give you a moment to type those out. Or Shadow Priests. We'll get there soon, as I'm sitting here right now recording, and whenever you're listening to this in the future, Hunter is next, and then Priest. I'm doing Shadow Priest literally last to see if anything happens, because they've done some other addressing points here and there with like Rogue, Blade Flurry, a little bit of Eclipse changes, and even some Feral Druid changes. So they've already done some class tweaks here, but man, nothing for Shadow Priest. It's such a weird spec, but Fury could have something there. And then Arms, the whole reason why I was saying like what kind of classes I play is I enjoy playing as ults, going and playing the classes that have a little bit more open air that you can react to or sort of plan things out. Because I can plan things out as Havoc or as Enhancement, but I'm still smashing buttons. And I was playing a bit of a plan stuff out, roll cooldowns one into another, into another, into another. When I was playing Arms, Fury was a bit more just grind it up. I was running the Siege Breaker, kind of Fervor of Battle, Wrecking Ball, Sudden Death, Massacre, just really cruise control, try to get in there and whirlwind stuff and spread that Siege Breaker hit, and then rampage on all those mobs while they're Siege Breaker, do a lot of chonky chunk. And it felt good. Like it felt really good. Fury and Arms both have a smoothness to them. Arms to pitch shift a little bit over to Arms Warrior. It didn't feel vastly different. Realistically, the major change that Arms was seeing was a couple of adjustments in how they deal with AoE. Because Arms has historically always been just LOL Bladestorm at forehead, right? Just really smooth brain approach to how you AoE. You hit Warbreaker and you hit Bladestorm. And you sit there for a few seconds spinning, and then after that, you put out sweeping strikes and you hit 2 targets. Maybe. That's all he really did. So the change, and there's been some positive feedback and a couple of comments in the Arms Warrior video section talking about how it could be really good if the cleave change, which is like the entire point of that video, is setting up that cleave is essentially a 5-target AoE mortal strike that also applies deep wounds and does like 2-ish times the damage of a mortal strike. It hits really hard, but it makes your AoE rotation boring. But then there was one, I think it was one comment that made me smirk, just like a half smirk, like, they get it. Think of some other AoE rotations right now. Look at Frost Death Knight with Frost Scythe. What do you do as a Frost DK when you're AoEing with Frost Scythe? You put up Remorseless Winter, you cast one Howling Blast, and then you Frost Scythe. 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 Then maybe a Howling Blast. And then you Frost Scythe. And then you Frost Scythe. You know, see what I mean? So, on Arms Warrior, if you just go into AoE and you Whirlwind Cleave, and then you Whirlwind Cleave, then you Whirlwind Cleave, you are just this torrent of two-hand sword swinging it around, just deep wounds going everywhere, whirlwind and cleaving stuff. And the new quality of life changed to Deadly Calm, which, if you don't know, Deadly Calm right now on live is super jank. It reduces your rage cost for a few seconds, which means that you have to hit it last if you want to make the most time of the few seconds that nothing costs any rage. But you also don't want to waste your Colossus Smash window before you press that, because you then lose a GCD waiting for Colossus Smash to go off. So there are these little moments now where I shut it off in the Arms video. You can Deadly Calm, which gives you 30 more max rage. You'll be auto-attacking, of course, during the situation. Deadly Calm off the GCD, charge in with Deadly Calm going off, and you can immediately just Whirlwind Cleave, Whirlwind Cleave. Those are all free. All 4 of those abilities are free. The next 4 abilities within, I believe it was like 20 seconds, are just free of rage cost. And you've built rage from the charge and an auto attack or 2 during that. So now you've got a whole bunch of rage. So what do you do now? You can Sweeping Strikes and 2-target Mortal Strike and go after the primary target or something like that. Or you can Whirlwind and Cleave and Whirlwind and Cleave. That costs 50 rage each rotation of that. 30 for the Whirlwind, 20 for the Cleave. All that time, of course, you're not quote-unquote burst AoEing. But Deep Wounds for the Arms Warrior is a 6-second dot. Once you have it rolling, of course, it's just consistent. It's just constant. So it's not burst, but it's not, you know, one giant Arcane Orb, Arcane Barrage, AoE Ricochet kind of combination. I get it. But the dot is, say, for example, for Prot Warrior, Deep Wounds is a 15-second dot. Slow ticking. Versus the high tick rate, obviously one is your mastery as Arms, is Deep Wounds. And there is a bit of, maybe not fundamental dissonance there, but definitely some disconnect, that there's some, not negative feedback, but people saying that, you know, you're babysitting a dot that does so much of your damage. Well, sure. On average, what is it? 30 to 40% of an Arms Warrior's damage is Deep Wounds. Well, what's the other 60%? A little bit of auto attack here and there, and obviously every other ability you're hitting. The Arms Warrior is supposed to be slow and chonky and heavy and weighty, and you want to probably still have an auto attack watcher, auto attack proc bar, so you know when you auto attack, you can leap out and immediately interrupt your leap with a charge back in for more rage before your next auto attack goes off. That is part of the rotation. It's part of the gameplay style of the Arms Warrior. Because it's so different than if you play Fury, where it's like, you're charged, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Enraged, Rampage, draw, Whirlwind, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, blah, blah, right? Versus the sort of more just, I was going to say, it's just slower paced, right? It's more methodical. It's that martial prowess with a giant two-hander versus just swinging around two-handers willy-nilly. Which I guess I could sidebar and say that I talked about it in the Fury Warrior video. I feel like if they bring back SMF, Single-Minded Fury, as only a cosmetic, It would make a lot of warriors happy. They just don't want to use two big old two-handers, and they want to go back to smaller one-handers to, you know, match with their transmog. We're getting transmog options soon where you can do one shoulder on, one shoulder off, two different matching or, you know, different size shoulders, whatever you want to do, like one big weapon, one smaller weapon. As a warrior, who cares? I've never been a fan of Titan's Grip myself. I always feel that the gladiator, the protector, the prot warrior itself is sword and board, one big old two-hander for arms, and two rapidly flurrying one-handers for the Fury Warrior. I get the lore. Obviously, if you can do that with two-handers, that's great. But it's not, I guess it's not wild and crazy enough to feel that it warrants just not being able to cosmetic to two smaller weapons. And there's so many cool one-handers out there that you just can't use. The only warrior that can use them is the prot warrior. But if you don't tank and you're only a DPS warrior, you lose the chance at all those one-handed weapons now. You know, but I mean, I guess most Fury warriors probably transmog to staves and just have sticks and just go punk punk, bonk, 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 bonk. Any stick warriors in chat? If you've been here for the 20 plus minutes and you're a stick warrior, or you're guilty of playing your Fury warrior and transmogging two big old sticks, you better put a comment down below. I'm watching you. I'm actually not. I'm just sitting here talking to my notes in my room studio, just recording. But there was one more thing to go back up to about the Shattering Throw, which is across the entire warrior class. And I believe I was on the right track with what I was saying in the video, where I talked about Shattering Throw in the previous DPS warrior videos. But I wanted to amend and make sure I updated that you cannot be interrupted while casting Shattering Throw. What I mean, and what I should have definitely expounded upon at the time when I was recording, is that you can interrupt yourself to not waste the Shattering Throw. As the 1.5 second cast, which is not hasted by any means, it seems, you can, of course, stop it with a stop cast macro built into the same macro, right? So you double tap it if you need to, or moving side to side, shimmying, casting something else, because you obviously want that spell to land when you are removing that immunity or when you're dealing big damage to a shield. And if you whoopsie it too early, it doesn't just always fire and forget, because it has that sort of that net to make sure with that 1.5 second cast time. So that's what I meant to say, but I think my mouth spoke before my brain really caught up. So you cannot be interrupted by, we tried today, getting pummeled didn't work, solar beam silencing didn't work, shadow pre-silence didn't work, regular old interrupt stuff, it didn't work. You cannot be locked out of it. If you get silence as a warrior, you just can't do shouts and taunts. Those count as your spells, I suppose. Everything else still works just fine. Another note that I wanted to bring up here is the discussion on utility and survivability. Arms having the intervene, die by the sword parry window is going to be pretty huge. All of the warriors, the DPS warriors, having the piercing howl AoE taunt is probably going to be pretty big, where you could piercing howl and then AoE taunt to peel or help peel, and then heroic leap away or intervene to someone far out, and then your tank can, you know, build aggro back. Something can happen there. You just get the kite train going on. Once your challenging shout ends, of course, it'll go back to highest threat, being the tank, I would imagine. But you can help buy time for your tank to kite. Even today, I was doing some keys before I sat down to record this, right? Where if my tank needed to run from necrotic stacks, I would stun or drop a Earthbind totem or whatever have you. And that's helpful. And those little moments, those nuggets of utility are being returned to the overall warrior class. Now, you might not be able to, you know, put a sword and board on and off tank as an arms warrior or a fury warrior. There's been some conjecture or talking about, just because you have shield block and shield slam back, you don't have the passives that make you not get destroyed. You don't have Vanguard. You don't have Riposte. You don't have any of the tanking cooldowns that really help you not get your face smashed in. Now, at hardest difficulty content, Mythic Plus, you can't even switch your weapon, so it's not really going to be a big deal. But in lower level content, sure, I imagine it could happen. There's been some wonder. We haven't tested this yet. This is one more thing we can test later on down the way for more like feedbacky kind of stuff. Again, mid to late June. If you can block certain attacks on you. Namely, I think it was a comment I saw a couple days ago, was blocking kidney shot, for example, because it counts as a physical ability that if it's blocked, it doesn't actually fire. You don't get stunned. And you could do that with intervene to block all melee attacks on your target in, say, an arena. And if that's the case, then that's wild. But I don't play enough warrior to know all those little minutiae utility moments. And if you know this works, then please let me know. But there's a couple of things like that I'm really looking forward to seeing the warrior as a class sort of bring to the table, other than just like, I'm a shout and bring battle shout. Battle shout was nerfed. It's 5% now. Still got rally and cry though. Commanding shout, whatever you want to call it. That's still a thing. That's getting buffed to be a little more oomphy for raid oriented stuff with a little bit more stamina going on there. So there's little things. And I think that as long as you utilize those, like Arms Warrior got a ton of survivability bumps in the Shadowlands build so far. The biggest one I think is still Impending Victory. I've talked about it before in the past, I think, of that being pretty good, but man, now at 30% HP, it's a health stone. It's an offensive health stone on a 30-second cooldown. That's so big. Just like huge. And obviously Spell Reflect, also huge. Let me know what your thoughts are down below of the overall warrior class. Are you excited for what has happened with the Prot Warrior, Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior? Are there problems you're seeing there that you don't like? Are there pain points? Make sure you use the, I wish it was baseline argument correctly. The argument there is that if it's good and you like to talent it a lot, that is fantastic. It shouldn't be baseline. If it is a talent or an effect that literally makes something work, that's argumentative points for making something baseline. But thank you very much for listening. Of course, my name's been Bay. If you have been here for all of this stuff and you've listened all this time, don't forget the like button is one of the greatest ways you can tell the YouTube algorithm to show my analytical blabbering blah 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 to more people on the internet. And it doesn't cost you anything but just a few moments of your time. Of course, if you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube channel, then maybe you should do so. Check out the channel guide linked down below for all of the past testing footage from this expansion and the previous two. I will see you all in the next Shadowlands Alpha testing. Hunters are coming up next.